My topic is about rape in African American women, and throughout my video, I will talk about a bunch of different subcategories. These subcategories include a history of rape in African American women, victim blaming, and the idea of consent. Also, throughout my video, I will be giving statistics on rape in African American women and why they are less likely to report. I picked this topic for a variety of reasons. The main reason I picked this topic was because I found it super interesting. While I was doing some research, I looked at various statistics about rape in African American women, and I also compared those to rape in just white women. I also found it interesting and important to inform people about the stigma of rape in African American women, and really looked at why they were less likely to report compared to other races and ethnic groups. An important person to talk about while talking about this subject is Rosa Parks. She's commonly known for her boycott that helped the civil rights movement, but before that happened, she was an anti-rape activist. For those who don't know what an anti-rape activist is, it's a person who fights for people who have been raped because they believe that it's never okay and that it should never happen in today's society. History played a major role in rape in African American women. One of the biggest events in history that occurred that relates back to the rape in African American women is enslavement. This particularly played a major role in African American women's lives. At this time period, other women weren't experiencing this kind of sexual assault because often the African American women were enslaved by white owners, which made them not have control over their own body. So technically, the white people or the white males could rape them and they couldn't do anything about it because they were enslaved by their owners. While doing research, I looked at a lot of different statistics about rape in African American women in that ethnicity. I particularly found two statistics that really stuck out to me. The first one was 40% of black women report coercive contact of sexual nature by age 18. That really stuck out to me because I think that's a really high number, and I think it's kind of scary almost that a lot of people or a lot of African American women get sexually assaulted or experience some kind of sexual assault by the age 18. I also found another statistics by the National Violence Against Women survey that found 18.8% of African American women report rape in their lifetime. I also found this number super high, but I started thinking about how most women don't report rape, and if the number of rapes already reported is super high, the number that aren't reported would increase the number of rapes total, so I found that super scary as well. 40% of black women report coercive contact of a sexual nature by age 18. What do you think about this statistic?
I think that this statistic is very high considering that prior to the age of 18, these black women aren't even technically adults yet, so that makes me feel sad that they are getting contact of a sexual nature before this age. And it's also important to realize that sometimes these reports aren't reported anywhere, so the number is actually probably much higher than 40%. Personally, I don't see that this is prevalent in my own community, so this statistic helps me realize how other people may feel of a different race.
When I met the boy that was to be my rapist, I was 12. And I was innocent, and I was a virgin, and I knew very little about sex.
When we got to the dorm room, he said, "Can I come in?" Well, at first I hesitated, but then I thought, oh, I'm sure it would be all right. I mean, he was one of our heroes.
Oh God, what is he gonna do to this knife? Do with this knife? Is he gonna stab me? Is he gonna stab my son? Is he gonna insert this knife in my vagina or what?
I was crying, and I had been struggling with him. And he was just yelling in my face, calling me all these names.
There was a part of me that said, no, he's not going to take that from you. He is not going to make you respond to something you don't want.
In the following video clips, it shows that a lot of African American women know their rapists and feel as if they are in a safe environment with a person that they trust, but little do they know that they put themselves in a dangerous environment with a dangerous person. Throughout my research on rape in African American women, I came across an article that was called "You Are Not Alone," and it was written by a woman named Abigail Francis Villa. And throughout the article, she talks about her personal experience with rape, and she explained that when she was younger, no one explained to her exactly what rape was, but throughout what she was hearing in the news, she knew it wasn't a good thing. She also explains that she's been a victim herself but considers it a more milder case. Her experience, quote unquote, happened on a subway more than once, and a man's penis explored her hip but her leg because of the crowded conditions. She explained that she suffered silently and didn't really talk to anyone about it. Since she didn't report hers, and she also said that African American women compared to white women report far less. She also brings in a study that she found that says when men are found guilty of raping African American women, they receive shorter sentences than those who raped white women. This shows because of race, the sentences are different, which is highly unfair, and it is important in our society to really think about this and think of how unfair and how stereotypical it is of treating African American women like this. In the rape culture today, victim blaming is very apparent. A lot of people blame the women for the rape when usually it's never their fault. It's always, they never pick to get raped. A lot of people bring up the idea of clothing and how, oh, she was dressed like a slut, so she was asking for it and it's her own fault. It's never the woman's fault. We should be able to wear what we want without being a target for rape. And this victim blaming isn't just in African American women, but it's also very apparent in African American women. It happens throughout all races, and no matter what the circumstances, it's never the woman's fault for getting raped. So victim blaming is ridiculous, and we should not be blaming the victim. African American women are less likely to report their rapes for many different reasons. According to a 2010 National Institute of Justice report, 14% of rape survivors who were physically forced and 7% of those who were incapacitated said that they didn't report their rape because they didn't think the police would think it was serious enough. According to another study, the historically black college and university campus sexual assault studied, nearly 20% of those physically forced and 15% of those incapacitated said they didn't report the crime because they didn't want to get the person in trouble. Some reasons why African American women don't report are similar to white women. They include a sense of shame, a belief that they are at fault, and a fear of repercussions. In the African American culture, also, women are to remain strong no matter what the circumstances or situation, which is why they are also less likely to report. In the rape culture, the idea of consent is often forgot about, but is actually very important. For example, it is important for both parties to give consent so there isn't miscommunication between them. Another common thing that you hear about with the idea of consent is alcohol and how it affects people's ability to give consent. And sometimes when alcohol is involved, the consent is taken as consent when actually they aren't in the logical mindset to give actual consent, which can cause issues when dealing with rape and whether or not to prosecute. Overall, rape in African American women differ from other racial and ethnic groups. The first reason I found this is true was because of the history that they had to go through. The enslavement of African American women was very hard on them, and that made them not have control over their own body, which was very hard. The other reason is that in the African American culture, women are supposed to stand up and be strong no matter what the circumstances is. Consent is another big deal in all rape cases of all ethnic groups. It is important to get consent from both parties to miss any miscommunication, and this will be easier if the trials of rape cases are pursued. Rape in African American women is highly stigmatized and is so unfair. I hope you learned a lot of information from my presentation. Thanks for watching.